All right, we're streaming. Okay. So this is the Glen Cove IDA and Local Economic Assistance Corporation Finance Committee. Present are Vincent Hartley, chairperson of the committee, John Fielding and Tom Hopkey. Also present are Margot Zoldesi, CFO, and Executive Director Ann Fangman. We're calling it at 6:37 p.m. And Margot, take it away.
Hey, good evening.
Just move the bottom.
In terms of the budget for the IDA for 2023, there was a slight amendment of the interest income on the CDs. So that was lowered, not by a substantial amount, but the budget changed by that. So if you'd like to take a look at page 1, this is a summary for the IDA, and I'll go through the revenue and expenses. The revenue for the IDA is projected for 2023 at $289,000. Salaries and benefits are $156,000. Total professional fees of $128,000. Admin expenses of almost $5,000, leaving a net operating surplus of $219. So if you would please go to page 2, I can go through the revenue. The revenue for the IDA, the total revenue of $289,000 is comprised of project consent fees anticipated at $150,000, and project admin fees, which are a fixed fee we receive every year, for the $25,000. So the revenue for the IDA is $175,000 and interest income at $4,500. Due to the change in the financial markets, the interest on the CDs has been reduced from prior years, but it is anticipated in 2023 that CD rates may go up. So again, the project consent fee is anticipated at $150,000, and we receive annual admin fees for the pilots, Glen, Avalon, Fair Housing, Georgia Brazilian, Diglett, Livingston, Michael Fantillo. RSR, the English Club, the Donato Group, and the Regency for $25,000. That's the source of revenue, $179,000. If you please go back to page 1, the total revenue is $289,000. That includes escrow fees of $110,000. So the escrow fee revenue is received and gets paid right back out as escrow expense. And that would comprise of legal fees for the IDA projects, namely RSR. If you'd like to flip to the page 3, the salary expense for the IDA, there's an allocation between the CDA section 8 and the IDA. So the IDA portion of salaries is $156,000. So the staff that work for the IDA, the portion of that salary is $156,000. The pure salary is $100,000, benefits is $56,000. So if you please flip to the next page, the benefits for the IDA, the $56,000, is broken down by allocation pay, health, dental, pension, FICA, retirement benefits, and workers' comp insurance. So in total, that's $56,000. And if you please flip to the next page, a portion of dues and subscriptions is allocated again between the CDA section and the IDA. Approximately $1,500 is allocated for the IDA. So in summary, for the budget analysis for 2023, there's project consent fees of $150,000, $25,000 annual admin fees, $4,500 in interest, and $110,000 in escrow fees. Keep in mind the escrow fees are paid out as escrow expense, so that $110,000 comes in and goes right back out to pay legal expenses. The salaries and benefits amount to $156,000. In terms of other expenses, we have $8,000 in audit fees, $10,000 in general counsel legal fees, and other expenses amounting to $5,000. There's a budgeted surplus of $200. Keep in mind that much of the revenue comes from project closing and has the ability to fluctuate from year to year. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. If there's no further any questions on that, I'd like to go into Giblet. The budget for 2023, which is pretty simple. Giblet has revenue admin fees of $2,000. The admin fees come from the Regency and tea room, and there's interest income of $500, so revenue of $2,500. Outflow of resources or expenses, paying admin fee to the IDA, an audit fee of $3,000. So there's a net loss of $2,500. So please feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
And really, there's, sorry.
Do we see any new projects coming in?
It's, it's hard to say because there's certain projects, I don't know if they're gonna close this year, they might close next year. It depends on our board because not every project that comes to us ultimately ends up getting approved, and if it doesn't get approved, we don't get fees at the end of that transaction. We've had some low income housing projects recently, like the pilot extension for Janet Lane, and we're typically not collecting the same kind of project fees on that type of transaction for a number of reasons. So it has the ability to fluctuate with the amount of projects coming in. Last year, we had a rather large project close at the end of 21, which far exceeded our budget. We had budgeted $176,000, and that project in closing costs exceeded. This year, we may not have a large project like that close, and we might come in under, the $176,000 that we're targeting. That's why we always say that everything has the ability to fluctuate. We do have some things coming down the road, some sooner rather than later.
So there was a significant decrease between 22.
So let me explain that. That revenue number is total revenue, which includes our escrow fees. So what Margot and I decided to do for 23 was just lower the amount that was budgeted for escrow fees based on what we had seen in 21 as an actual, okay? So out of that total revenues of $289,500, only $176,000 is budgeted to be actually coming in revenue for projects. The other monies are simply money in, money out. So all we did was change the amount of money in, money out. And there's a reason for that. When we were coming right out of Garvey's Point and out of Village Square, we had a lot more escrow fees going on for the attorneys and for other professional services. Now that we're nearly 6 years into, post-closing of Garvey's Point, those escrow fees have slowly decreased over time, as they should. But those are fees that we are not paying, they go through us. But it also doesn't look good when, say, we budget $511,000 like we did last year, and then we only have, a much lower amount of escrow fees come in.
Right. Well, what would have been the administrative fees for 22?
Do we have actual for 22? Admin?
Well, for FY 22, it would be for January through June at this point, or January through July.
Oh, do you mean 21? What we had?
21, yeah.
Yeah, 21.
Oh, in terms of,
The revenue we received from the IDA. Total?
total revenue was 661,000.
And that was because we had a rather large project closing, that happened. So again, it really has the ability to fluctuate because we had, budgeted something lower than that.
And that came in December.
It did, so like, if that had closed a month later,
Right.
that revenue actually would have been in 22.
I think it's easy to say, but we try to be conservative.
That's my point. Like, we shouldn't be budgeting for higher escrow fees. If we see the escrow fees year after year coming in lower and lower, we shouldn't be increasing our project administrative costs when we know we tend to fluctuate. And that fluctuation is very uncertain. And there's no particular projects that we know for sure that are large enough we're gonna close in a particular year with that fluctuation. I mean, there's also been a lot of uncertainty still due to COVID, inflation, labor shortages. There's been a lot of different factors going on in the economic development world, for sure. I guess the only question I had for you, Margot, is on the LEAC. I guess there's really no mechanism to have a positive change in that position unless we increased the amount of funds going from the IDA GICLA. Right?
Yes, or take it out of the cash on hand that Gibson has.
Right. Okay. The GICLIC's a very small agency that only has 2 projects. Because it's kind of our nonprofit arm and there's very limited types of projects that the GICLIC can take up. So again, that's another budget where it's very tiny and, I don't like to have a negative there, but at the same time, there's very few things we could do to really prevent that, so. The IDA gives $2,000 to GICLIC every year in admin fees.
So you want to explain the next steps?
Do you want me to do that, Michael? Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, this was very well prepared. So typically we say at the end of this committee meeting that, we've all met now, we've had a chance to review the budgets. If you have any questions, comments, edits, contact Margot. We will be putting this up for full board review on the 23rd, August 23rd, with hopeful adoption in September because the budgets have to be submitted to the state in our Paris reporting system by September 30th. They need to be adopted by then. We also typically say that the committee has met at our full board meeting and that they're making the recommendation for this budget to be reviewed by the full board. Vincent knows because he's been through this process more times than I. But we want this committee to be comfortable with recommending it to the full board.
Okay. So we're adjourned?
If no one else has any questions for us?
Thank you so much.
Very well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for double the amount of your time today. And Vincent, you have a couple minutes, I'll catch up with you. Thank you. All right, have a nice night.
Take care.